Hello, Flat Earth researchers, debaters, and debunkers. Realizing that we are not on a spinning globe going around the sun in a physical representation of the mathematical heliocentric model leaves us kind of feeling lost and without direction, even if the globe Earth belief doesn't really appear to give us a direction. It in fact does. It is a total misdirection and deception into space and beyond, this unattainable place, intangible place, with which, of course, we associate the heavens. But this is the whole crux of the hoax, is that our attention and our good intention often is misdirected outwards and upwards to a place we can never really get to. But we are being distracted from putting our attention in completely the opposite direction towards our inner selves in order to understand more about who we are and possibly why we're here. Where we are is maybe something we can never really find out. But this quest to explore space and beyond, get off this spinning rock, is of course driven by the desire to explore that kind of pioneering spirit, and that is because we question, we want to know where we're going. Yeah? We're asking ourselves, what is this journey? The body is like a vehicle, it's like a car taking us somewhere. It doesn't really matter too much how it works, as long as it does, and it can take you on the journey. But of course, the destination isn't the point, is it, really? The journey is the point. Of course, we are aiming to get to a destination when we depart on a journey. But of course, life itself, coming into this physical realm, is the beginning of a journey of experiences and gaining knowledge, gaining some kind of understanding of what it's like to be human, or what it's like to be a sentient being. So we come away from this globe cult and realizing that our physical realm is stationary is just part of it, because to get to that stage we've had to question a lot about the culture we've been born into, and that is a global culture that has been developed over the past few generations. It is, in fact, a social experiment of which we are part of. And so, of course, there are people or entities that understand humans. We're still fairly simple creatures at the end of the day, but we make things very complex, and then, of course, we get lost in emotions and attachments and confusion and misdirection. So anything that offers us some kind of direction gives us a sense of security. But of course, if you're hanging on to the back of a shark, it's actually, the Chinese have a saying that goes with business, and that is to grab hold of the tail of a tiger. You just have to hang on, and you're going to get thrown about, and it's going to be a vicious ride. But this is a conscious decision to grab onto the tail of a wild animal. and it is a predator. And this is what the global matrix really is. It is predatory in its nature. And if we are given the tools and the faculties to do so, we can decide whether to enter the global jungle, the matrix, where predators lie all about, and become predatory ourselves in that respect in order to survive. Or do we recognize it for what it is? Do we see it for what it is, as a separate entity that is just a construct, a mental construct, a cultural construct of the mind that we can allow ourselves to indulge in or not? But we have to be aware that we can make the decision, and often we can't. So, of course, getting to the realization that there is an entire construct around us that enslaves us is also part of it. And to a greater extent, that is the deception, regardless of the actual shape and dimensions of the earth and where it is. So I've pulled up a list of, this is the 15 top most profitable businesses according to industry, and these figures were put together by Forbes, I believe, for 2018. And we'll just quickly go through the list, but it's interesting to keep in mind that everything that is being discussed here is in the form of something that is part of this global matrix, and these are cash munching machines that some people will profit from, but will in fact put most people into debt to create more money. So 15 is support activities for mining. Obviously mining is a massive thing, and it's higher on the list here, but the support activities for mining are at 15. 14, death care services. The profit margin for support activities for mining is 11%, and that's the same for death care services. So of course when someone dies, you have to have the funeral and everything has to be arranged, and certificates have to be done according to the maritime law that we are put into after birth. And so a death certificate has to conclude the voyage of the body. The irony is that you should be free of that, but of course you've either been saving up to pay for that, or you have insurance which you've had to contribute towards, or your relatives have to then take on the burden of taking care of the death care services. So we often leave this place with debt that doesn't belong to anyone anymore, but it's transferred. That debt is transferred. The same goes for property that's transferred, or any kind of assets that someone might have when they die and they want to pass on to their children or their relatives. A huge percentage of any property or other valuable assets will be taken by government services, and the rightful owner will be left with not much. If you wanted to take on a property that was given to you by your mother or father, you would have to pay a massive percentage of the total value of that property to the death care services of the country. So you constantly get taxed. We're taxed. We're taxed while we're working. We're taxed on pensions after we finished working, and we're taxed when we leave this place. Number 13 is activities related to real estate, property management, basically. So agencies that kind of play around with the money and property. That's 11% profit margin as well. Hitting number 12 is other schools and instruction college slash universities. That's at 11% profit margin as well. So, there is massive profit to be made. Among all the industries in the world, we're just looking at the top 15, the creme de la creme, and education essentially beyond the standard education we get at secondary school is a hugely profitable business. So again, we have to think about the institutionalized culture of science, scientism, and what we have or have not been taught in terms of how to use our faculties and use our discernment. So this is of course in fact why money-making schemes can work on the masses. The people can be indebted because they look at the donor as some kind of savior, the opportunist predator who takes advantage of people's good nature is seen as a friend. I might come back to that later, which kind of leads on to the whole space thing. So bear with me as we go through this. And so it's just really to talk about multi-level marketing schemes and how that whole thing about hope, etc., ties into the desire to get to places like Mars. But I'll just quickly go through this list first and come round to that. Yeah. Number 11, outpatient care centres. They get 12% profit margin. So private healthcare, basically. 10. And again, worth keeping in mind that many of these services are related to totally fictional things. Sometimes they're not even things. They are also they are also services that could be provided for free. Especially when it comes to healthcare and housing, and basically just making sure that the populace has sufficient care of itself. The human resources are well looked after. So outpatient care centres, number 11. Number 10, management of companies and enterprise. That's 12% profit margin. So I suppose, venture capitalists, etc., just coming in and gobbling up companies and splitting them up and basically, enterprise. So they're in building up businesses to sell on, break up into pieces and sell on. Number 9, offices of other health practitioners, 13%. So other health practitioners means the alternative healthcare that they've allowed, such as acupuncture, massage, that kind of thing. Nothing too far out, I don't think. But the alternative practices that are now allowed. So the rental space, basically, for the offices of these health practitioners is a hugely profitable business. And the same goes for offices of real estate agents and brokers and offices of physicians. So 9 down to 7 there is real estate related, and even down to 6 when the lessors of real estate, the people renting properties out, are getting about a 14% profit margin. The offices of dentists are at 15% at number 5. And number 4 is commercial and industrial machinery and equipment rental and leasing. 16% profit margin. So that's heavy lifting equipment. Obviously, like I said, industrial machinery. So any industry you can imagine, and it needs machinery. So it's obviously a huge, huge part of the structure. 3, oil and gas extraction. So that's from the oil rigs to the fracking, etc. Oil and gas. And of course, they could well be using the gas that we give them for free from our sewage systems and turning that into gas that we then have to turn around and pay for again. The huge profit margin there of 16%. And that's number 3 as the top 15 most profitable businesses. Then 2 and 1 are basically representing non-entities, things that are not physical. These are legal services at number 2, which is an 18% net profit margin. So, of course, legal wrangles are usually about copyrights or money-related takeovers, compensation. It's the whole thing that's all basically tied into whether someone pays a fine or undergoes prison time in place of that fine, or of course you've got to pay the courts, pay the lawyers, etc. So, and these are often things that are fabricated in this fabricated world to keep us totally misdirected on things that we have made legal by signing our name to them and agreeing to do certain things. And often it is a case of agreeing to go into debt. Or even if you want to keep yourself out of debt, if you want to try to ensure that you can leave something for your descendants, then you would have to employ legal services to pay for them to give you the right advice in order to protect yourself from being hacked up to 40 or 50% from the taxman or the Inland Revenue when you pass out of this place and want to hand over your property to your kids. They literally keep track of the finances of people who have retired and have made their savings, paid their taxes all their lives, but there's only a certain amount of money they can send out, give away, give to relatives, and anything they do send out comes off. It's all about how much more time you've got between your death, and it's totally tied up in bureaucracy that you need legal services to wade through. So, of course, this fear of having to spend loads of money or lose all your money at the end of your time on this earth, you have to employ legal services. And they are among the top 15. Both of those, the death care services, the health services, all that stuff. And then at number 1, we've got accounting, tax preparation, bookkeeping, and payroll services with a net profit margin of 20%. So this is basically the number 1 most profitable industry in the world is accounting, tax preparation, bookkeeping, and payroll services. So you have to pay people to pay your taxes. So the one industry that can help you navigate this artificial construct, this global system, it's it's like the snake eating its tail. I wonder if that symbology means anything. It's just around and around in a vicious cycle of debt slavery. So the question is, how did we allow this to happen in the first place? How did we get into this culture of debt slavery? And why do we allow it to perpetuate? I think it comes down to a basic instinct that we all have, possibly more so in the male than the female. And this is this mission to propagate the species. Of course, that is essentially a good and necessary intention, to want to build a foundation for the future, for our future children and future generations. This, it would seem, is a noble cause. So we're always having our attention and our focus on the future, the what if. But of course, fear is also part of that. So we have this mixture of the desire to move forward, expand, grow the population in our own small way, our family. But also we have that coupled with a fear that if we don't focus our energy on the future, then that future will be very dark and dim, or there won't be a future. So the focus is completely taken away from the now. But it is only in the now that things get done. Of course, very constructive things are done which have benefits for the future, and of course planning often works out. But it is our good nature to want to make a contribution to society as a whole, I suppose, that is misdirected. And this is done in all walks of the global culture, from the politics, just giving hope to one side or the other, creating this false dichotomy all the time, switching it backwards and forwards every few years. It just keeps things going. Again, the serpent eating its own tail. It's just round and round and round. So to be focusing our energy on the political system is a waste of energy. It's kind of futile. Of course, it's beneficial to be aware of freedoms that will be taken away if we allow that to happen. And of course, we're often cajoled into it. We give up one thing to have freedom with another. But of course, no one ever talks about changing the entire system. The system is well in place, and people don't question the system. We're just conditioned to argue about the things that are in place already to keep the system going, essentially. So yeah, our good nature is misdirected, and of course, if one is good natured and wants to devote time and energy, but is also selfish, which we all are, then we will continue to be scammed, tricked, delusioned, deceived in so many ways that are all part of this global system, the global matrix. I mentioned multi-level marketing programs earlier on. There's one that's caught my attention recently, which is Future Ad Pro. And it's incredible, really, how they get people to sign up by buying advertising packs and then believing that they're making money by getting paid for watching ads. But it really is all about, it's just virtual real estate that new members pay to join with the promise of a bright future. And if and when they ever reach an amount of money that they actually invested, or even before then, they're encouraged to reinvest, and all the money they're making is virtual money. So they've taken real money in the real world and converted it into something like Bitcoin. And then to join this scheme, you use Bitcoin to purchase your advertising packs, which is basically to pay for people to view your ads. And the ads that people create are, of course, ads to promote their own position in this multi-level marketing network and convince people to join, pay their fees, and work by clicking ads. And so it goes on. It really is a representation of the serpent eating its own tail, because you're investing money and time into something that never gives you a return on your investment. As I said, you might perhaps break even if a saturation point isn't reached before you've actually made back your money. But you get stymied on the conversions of the virtual currency into another virtual currency, and then into real currency. So 3 or 4 exchange rates later, you're down on anything that you made before it gets to your bank account. It goes back to the financial services being at the top of the top 15 most profitable businesses or industries, because you've got these people or groups who understand or who are behind the making of this fictitious money, and then selling investment opportunities to people who won't look into it too deeply and will willingly contribute their own time and money, obviously with the hopes of making their own profits, but at the same time they are convinced that they must put everything back into the company so it can grow for a future, for a bright future. And it's all about just circulating virtual money for virtual real estate. None of it actually exists at all. The things people are buying or don't exist, and the money they're making doesn't exist. But the enthusiasm for this bright future is kept going, is kept alive for months or years at a time, until people that have invested their time and money eventually realize that they're not going to get anything back, or everything closes down and they just lose everything and have to deal with it, and then they realize they've got no recourse, no way to get back that time and money that they invested. So it's funny, even when people who invest in these kind of things see that it's not going to work out, they will carry on feeding the beast because of the time they've already invested. And of course, that is they've invested in a belief, and again they've invested their time and energy, and so it's very, very difficult to let go of that. And so the same goes for space. The whole space program, exploring, spreading our seed across the galaxy, it's a very male thing. And the kind of people that support it are, on the one hand, nice people, gullible people sometimes, misinformed, intellectually lazy, and selfish. Now, I'm happy to apply those labels to myself as well. But over the years, there's been an effort to be aware of these intrinsic elements of our human nature. And so we then realize that certain people, certain things, certain ideas, certain beliefs are not worth investing time and energy in. And there are also things that we can learn to let go of, even if we've spent money, or especially if we've been expecting money. It's often we can expect money, and we're expecting it, and we're expecting it, and we're put off, we're expecting some kind of result. Again, this education, it's all built on hope. Go to school, get educated, complete secondary school, go to college, complete that, go to university, and then you can go and get a job, and then you start working your way up through the job, and it's always looking forward to that promotion, or the day you can afford that house or that car, or achieve certain status. It's all built on hope. Now, this isn't an anti-education rant. We all have the capacity to learn and educate ourselves, and especially these days, the information is out there for us to do so. But the qualifications and the knowledge that you need to navigate the global construct cost money. So yeah, we're sold the idea of space, and so many people go along with it because it's that human instinct to better ourselves, to build a brighter future. But of course, all the time we're being distracted from the here and now, the bright here and now that we have, and we cannot predict will still be here tomorrow. It's very true, tomorrow never comes, ever. So we are enslaved. We are enslaved in a culture, in a system that has us pedaling away like mad to reach the top of that hill, or to reach that rock in space. But all the while, so we're focused on the destination. We're not focused on the journey. We're in the car, or the body, the vessel, racing away to get to the finish line. But the finish line it's unreachable. It's not linear. It's circular, globular, spherical. So it is quite funny that the globe is something that you go around and around and around, and it goes around and around and around, and but all the while we're on this kind of linear timeline, while we're given all the models and what we see, the way we see it all is secular, even the way we measure time, which is essentially what we're observing. It is cycles, and we represent it in that way. And that's why we have the globe, because it's simply representing a cycle of time, or cycles of time. But the idea of time in our heads is one of a straight line from Big Bang, evolution up to now, as if there's never been any kind of it's just been one line of evolution. So of course the whole idea of evolution, we're taught to look at this idea of the evolution of our species and that desire to progress is directed to the stars, and we're told that this is our path to evolve further. We somehow made it onto this rock, and now to evolve we have to make it off of the rock. But that is again just a distraction from the true evolutionary process that perhaps we all are going through as individuals, is to evolve the mind and spirit. And this is something that might take a single lifetime, or it may take several lifetimes in this physical realm. Who knows? Who knows? But this is it. The entire system, the entire global system is really nothing more than an idea. And all the political ways of running society, all the different labels we give to it, socialism, communism, democracy, it's all based on the same principles, isn't it? The same plan, the same storyline. We devote our time and energy to a future. Yet we have no idea really about our past. Of course, we know all the stories about our past, our history. I'd say we have devolved. We have devolved into greedy, selfish, misdirected, misinformed, hopeful individuals. So when it comes to really finding out the truth of who we are and why we are here, that can only be done by observing ourselves, observing our own human nature. It's incredible how many people are qualified by the system to give labels to people, but may well be all of those things themselves. We've just, as time's gone by, more and more labels have been added to human behaviors, and extremes of these behaviors can be labeled as insanity. So when we come across flat Earth and we do our research and we do our thinking, and we realize that we have been misled, we have been duped, there's a whole lot more to realize about the lies. But we have no one to blame but ourselves. Because everything about the system is built on our human nature, the way we are. a way that we don't recognize until we take a step back or step outside and become an observer and realize that we are the same as a passenger in a car. So we have a soul in a body, and the body is transporting us about on our journey. But we very rarely look at ourself as being a person or an entity inside a vehicle from a kind of external point of view, the movie of ourselves. So to question it, to question the whole thing is difficult, but then we also instinctively look to blame, and we can't really lay our fingers on who's to blame, and so yes, we do become lost without this system with some very strict guidelines, whether it's our culture or a global culture. Without a culture, we feel lost. We feel as if we don't have direction, because we are unable to look at ourselves or simply look at nature and take our lessons from what we see and experience going on around us. But it all comes down to those very basic instincts of survival, fight and flight, propagation of the species, the future, hope, and a desire for an easy life. So we suffer in all these ways, and whether it's seeking joy or any kind of attachment, it's all a form of suffering. So this is why the middle path is stressed by the science of Buddhism, for example, where as long as we are aware of our mind and the way it is influenced by our ego, by our senses, by our culture, then we will walk the middle path, and we will be in the here and now, and we can then make better decisions for ourselves, for our families, for the species. But while we are distracted with visions of populating other planets and all that, we're not doing anything to better ourselves. So in that sense, realizing that we're not on a spinning globe is a very important step. But it's certainly not the last step in finding out the truth. We might finally realize the extent of which we've been misled and misdirected and deceived, but ultimately it's because we deceived ourselves or allowed ourselves to be deceived. And as this happens to individuals, then of course it becomes those individuals then gain control, gain power, because we acquiesce. However, we all know from experience that we can't just change someone's mind. They have to be ready. We have to have been asking questions for a long time. But there's this feeling of being lost for a while once we realize that we haven't been given any answers whatsoever, is when we really do need to find our own direction. And this is what the whole thing should lead to, is for each of us as individuals to look inwards and to a certain extent have faith in the direction, whatever is mapped out for us, or the infinite possibilities that lie ahead of us, depending on the decisions we make on a daily basis or a minute-to-minute basis. Because if we are in control and we are not influenced and we are not attached and we are not suffering, then we will make wholesome decisions and we will evolve. And this is just a natural progression of the mind and soul when we take note, when we start observing. It's not until we start observing that we start noticing things about ourselves. Of course, it's very easy to point the finger at other people and say, you're like this and I... But I think what's interesting when even people fight amongst themselves within a group they might have formed, or a relationship they might have formed, we see that the way things go in any kind of discussion really depends on each person's ability to be detached from the things they hear. If we take offense, if we feel embarrassed or feel threatened, or we feel disappointed or disillusioned, or we then go on the defense, and a fight ensues, an argument ensues. And this is what we often see happening these days. We see people aware of how we've been imprisoned in our own minds. We are slaves of our emotions, and we realize that to a certain extent, and that takes a lot of gumption. But then we forget, or we swap one belief for another, and we go back to square one again, defending our belief, defending our investment, defending the time and energy we've put into our most recent discovery. So there is no finish line, there is no end point. There is only continual progression and evolution and observation. But then that is our direction. When we find that direction in ourselves and we stand alone, then we are not lost anymore. We don't need direction from others. We don't need attachment to others. And we don't need attachment to ourselves, most importantly. It is, isn't it? It's our attachment to ourselves that is the biggest deceiver. And it really is an ongoing process that we have to have to be constantly at battle with our own being. But that doesn't mean turmoil. That doesn't mean we should be in a constant state of war with ourselves, because there is a point when the strength will prevail, the endurance will prevail, the training or taming of the monkey mind and the ego will prevail if we persist. Thank you very much.